I wanted to start this video by focusing on this whiteboard because the branding message is all about marketing. Marketing, messaging, branding, positioning, that's all in the family that comes before sales. Starting with this video, and for the next 25 videos, we're going to be talking about marketing. Yes, it's related to sales, but marketing is not sales. Go all the way back to the first episode of The Cheeky Sales Coach. Rewatch that video. It's all about what is sales and what is not. And remember, marketing is everything that happens before you ask somebody for their money. That's when sales take place. Now, I'm going to put a link down below, but if you Google Heidi Cohen and define marketing, she's got a blog post with 72 definitions of marketing. That should at least tell you that there isn't universal agreement on what it's about. I will say a lot of the definitions are wrong because they talk about sales and marketing as if they're the same thing. They're absolutely related. You need marketing to get people into your sales funnel so you can ask them for their money. They're related. They're closely related, but they are not the same thing. Welcome to episode 26 of The Cheeky Sales Coach. Let's talk marketing. Obviously, the word of the day is marketing. Here's how I define that. Marketing is the process of intentionally managing and sharing the public vision of your company or organization. So one thing that's clear from the 72 definitions of marketing is that marketing is not obvious or easy to define. So in my definition, I'm very careful to mention that it's a process. It's very important that you understand it's a process. And why is that? Well, you've heard this before. You can't control people, but you can control your process. In fact, I believe that creating processes is one way to solve many, many problems. There's two definitions I want to point to specifically in the list of definitions that I talked about. First, Mary Ellen Bianco has a great analogy that marketing is to sales what plowing is to a farmer. In other words, it sets up an environment for success. It lays the groundwork literally for you to build your sales campaigns. I will say there's probably over half of the definitions in this list talk about sales and promotion of exchanging items for value. Well, that's not marketing. That is sales, and you really have to draw that line. Marketing sets the groundwork for sales, but it's not sales. I believe that the last definition in this long list is probably the best, which may be why she put it last. It's from Deborah Weinstein, and here's the important piece of it. Marketing builds relationships between consumers and brands. The many disciplines that go into the process together create a brand personality designed to be compatible with the target. So that gets to the point that it's a process and that it's got many, many elements. Now, here's 6 or 7 things you need to know about marketing. Thing number one, there are two primary kinds, two big categories of marketing. There's campaigns, which are spending that happens either once or in a series over time. So for example, you might have a series of marketing campaigns. You might have the fall campaign and the spring campaign and the campaign that gets people to sign up for the newsletter, and right, there's different kinds of campaigns. And then you have constant spending. So constant marketing, for example, would be something like having a website. That falls into your marketing budget. So think about the parts of your budget that fall into one-time campaigns or time-bound campaigns, and the parts that are constant and ongoing. A lot of people want to put the sales and marketing budgets together. You can't do that. Sales is a whole different animal. So a sales campaign will actually ask people for their money. A marketing campaign is intended to get your name out there, get people on your list, get people engaged in the conversation that will someday lead to sales, but it doesn't necessarily start with sales. When I want to just get people's interest in something, for example, before I launch a new book or before we launch a new program, I will do a mailing. And we're going to talk about a marketing mailing and how it's different from a sales mailing. A marketing mailing is a campaign. Now that's very different from, as I said, maintaining your website. When I look at my budget for marketing, it includes things like the graphics tools that I use and pay for my team to have so that they can create graphics, so they can create videos, so they can create new material to get the word out. Almost none of that is related to sales, but all of it is related to branding and messaging and marketing. My budget also includes things like all the websites, the web hosting, all of the things related to, again, maintaining that messaging machine. And that's very different from asking people for their money. Thing number 2, some pieces of marketing are very mundane, some pieces are very exciting. Here's what I mean by that. Some things in your marketing budget are literally going to be subscriptions to LinkedIn or to a software package that helps you develop materials, or even you can put your Microsoft Office 365 licensing into the marketing budget because it helps move that forward. Those are very mundane things. They're not very visible. They're kind of the tools you need to make marketing happen. I like buying silly things like these tiles so that I can spell things out. That goes into my marketing budget. Having somebody put captions underneath my videos, that goes into my marketing budget. These things drive the process of creating a public persona, but they don't ask people for their money. When I say, go to cheekysalescoach.com and sign up for the premium downloads, now we're talking about sales. But when I say, watch the next video, go back and watch the first video and learn the difference between sales and marketing, that's promoting something, but it's not asking you for your money. It is marketing, not sales. Thing number 3, marketing is an expense. Why is that important? Well, because you have to understand that there is no return on investment for marketing. You can measure performance, but you can't measure dollars coming in the door. This is actually the beginning of a very long, complicated, and drawn-out discussion that will never end about how your marketing affects outcomes, in particular, sales. Again, we don't want to have those things too well connected because marketing leads to sales. Let's say that you do a marketing campaign to get people onto your mailing list and you get 100 extra names on your mailing list. As a separate conversation, you can discuss what the expected value is of somebody on that list. You may even see that in the process of getting somebody on your list, somebody went ahead and read through some materials, went through a sales funnel, and bought something. Great. But somewhere along the line, you moved from the campaign, which was marketing, get people on the list, to putting people into a sales funnel, and then that sales funnel did its job, right? So that's all good, but it's really hard to draw a nice, clear line that you spend more money on this marketing campaign and you're going to get more sales. That's not what marketing is intended to do. Marketing has to do its job and get people warmed up for the sales process. Sales has to do its job and get people to actually bring money in the door. So sales has an ROI, marketing does not. Again, I just want to be super clear about the expense piece of this. If you spend time putting together videos, you spend time writing a blog post, you spend time on social media, that's all good. That's all marketing. It's all part of what you need to do. It builds your brand, it builds your identity, but it is an expense, even if it's only an expense in your time. Thing number 4, marketing is a very big picture item. Marketing is the closest thing we have to actually helping other people see our vision for our company. When we talk about mission, vision, and values, one of the most important things people have to understand is that your mission statement is this big set of goals out there that you want to achieve. Your vision is literally what the world would look like if you achieved your mission. So those things are very personal to you. They're personal to your business. So that's part of your branding. And you know, the whiteboard I showed at the very beginning, right across the top, it's got one of my absolutely favorite phrases that I say all the time. Branding is every single thing we do. Branding includes the way we talk to customers, the way we talk to each other, the way we document things, the colors that we use in our logos, the way that we act, the way that we behave. Everything is branding. I like to have a company that's a little bit playful. I hire people who are very creative and I let them do their thing. That's part of my brand. I try new things constantly. That's part of my brand. I want people who commit to me as clients for 10, 15, 20 years. That's part of my brand. I commit to my clients for 10, 15, 20 years. That's part of my brand. So big picture stuff is about branding, and that's a piece of marketing is branding. But remember, branding is every single thing you do. Marketing is the closest you get to taking a huge overview of every single thing in your company and saying, this represents who we are and how we want to present ourselves to the world at large, to our clients, to our employees, to everybody. And some of that eventually leads to sales, but some of it is simply positioning yourself in the world. I know that sounds kind of highfalutin, but the truth is, it is. It's a really high-level philosophical way of looking at your business, and that's worth doing. Thing number 5, marketing should never stop. What does that mean? Well, there's some pieces of your marketing that literally go on all by themselves without you doing anything extra. For example, your website. It's out there, it's doing its thing. If you have a blog, it's out there. You should keep feeding that blog. If you have videos, they're out there forever. You should keep feeding your video pipeline. Some of the stuff you put out there lasts essentially forever. Some of it needs to be tuned up on a regular basis. Some things go out in a nonstop flood. For example, you should absolutely and definitively have a newsletter. I don't care if there's only 20 people on that list. You should send out a newsletter a minimum of once a month. Make sure people know that you're alive, that your company is doing things, that you've got some ideas. Even if they don't open it, they will see it. Trust me on this one. And they'll see that communication so that on the day that you pick up the phone and say, hey, can we have a meeting? You're not a complete stranger. So obviously your newsletter should constantly be going out on a regular basis. And other things that you do out there, again, sort of being present on social media and so forth, that's all part of the non-stop marketing. It doesn't all cost a lot of money. Most of it costs nothing, but it does take some time and it takes some effort. But you should constantly be putting out effort so that people understand who you are, what your company does, what you stand for, and whether or not they want to do business with you. Remember, I define marketing as a process that's related to building your public persona. That takes effort. You have to do that. It's not going to happen by itself. In fact, that leads us to thing number 6. Marketing cannot be an accident. Here's what I mean. Left to itself, the universe has something called entropy, which is it starts falling apart. And so the more entropy, the more disorder you have in what's out there, the less control you have over what people think about your business, what they think about your offering, what they think about your pricing and your employees and your processes and your procedures. You have to take control of that because entropy could kill your brand. If you don't control your brand, somebody else will. Every once in a while you see some example where somebody will point to a Facebook page where a major corporation has basically given up. They put up a page and then all these other people come in and post nasty comments about the company, and the company has no way of responding. They don't do anything to take control of their messaging. And so they lose some of their branding because they turn it over to the public and just let people say whatever they want. Other brands are very, very good. They engage people. They say, oh, I'm sorry you had a bad experience. Let's get in touch with you. We'll have somebody call you today, right? Meet me in the chat, whatever. They take control, and maybe they don't solve all the problems in the world, but they are controlling their branding. It's not random. It doesn't happen by itself. So you have to make sure that you get your arms around what you want your marketing to be and do it with intention. If you just do nothing, or you just let other people talk about your company and your offering and your services and your pricing, you have no control over that conversation. To have some influence, you have to participate in the conversation about your own company. That's marketing, and it can never end. Finally, number 7. Marketing is more fun than sales. Why do we care? Well, here's the deal. You can get trapped into doing lots of things that are called marketing, but really think that what you're doing is promoting sales. Don't make that mistake. Too many people do things like tune up their search engine optimization. That's great. You should do it. But remember, it's marketing. It cannot lead to sales. All it can do is warm people up so that when you go to make sales, they've heard of you, they know who you are, you show up on their radar, right? So keep this in perspective. Marketing, I love marketing, right? I buy toys and I have fun things. I have murals painted on my wall. That's part of my branding. That's part of my marketing. I think it's a lot of fun, but I have to be clear. When I want sales, I need to do advertising and promotions, and I need to go out and ask people for their money. So the fact that marketing is fun shouldn't lead you to believe that it's enough. Marketing is never enough. You do need sales. Marketing should warm people up for the sales funnel, but marketing is not sales. And even though it's much more fun, don't get lost in it and think that that's all you need to do. You also need sales. Hey, I hope you make a bunch of sales this week. Please send me your questions and comments. You can put comments down below. Would love to hear your feedback. And you can check out all of our premium material at cheekysalescoach.com. Call to action. Like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you won't miss a thing.